For decades, Clive Davis has been called one of the most powerful men in the music industry. He helped launch legendary careers, signed some of the biggest artists in history, and built an empire that changed music forever. But behind that remarkable legacy, another story has continued to spark debate. A story that refuses to disappear. More than a decade after Whitney Houston's tragic death, questions, documentaries, interviews, and online discussions continue to divide fans around the world. Now, comedian Katt has once again fueled that conversation with broader comments about how the entertainment industry operates, leading many viewers to revisit old questions surrounding Whitney's final days. Supporters insist the official findings should be respected. Critics argue there are still unanswered questions about the circumstances, the media coverage, and decisions made by powerful figures around Whitney's career. One decision, in particular, still shocks people today. Why did Clive Davis continue hosting his annual pre-Grammy party after learning of Whitney's death? Was it simply an impossible decision made during an unfolding tragedy? Or is that moment one reason the controversy has never truly faded? Tonight, we are separating documented events from speculation, revisiting the timeline, and examining why Whitney Houston's death continues to generate intense debate more than a decade later. Because sometimes, the biggest mystery isn't what happened. It's why people are still asking the same questions years later. The reason this story continues making headlines more than a decade later isn't because of one shocking theory. It's because of one unforgettable night. February 11, 2012. Just hours before the Grammy Awards, the music world was preparing for one of its biggest weekends of the year. Inside the Beverly Hilton Hotel, executives, artists, and celebrities were arriving for Clive Davis's annual pre-Grammy Gala, one of the most exclusive events in the music industry. Then everything changed. Whitney Houston was found unresponsive in her hotel room. Within minutes, news began spreading through the hotel. According to publicly reported accounts, many guests inside the building learned that something serious had happened before the event even began. What happened next became one of the most debated decisions of Clive Davis's career. Instead of cancelling the evening, the event continued. During the gathering, Clive Davis addressed the audience and paid tribute to Whitney, explaining that he believed she would have wanted the music to continue. For some people, that decision reflected professionalism during an unimaginable tragedy. For others, it felt impossible to understand. The criticism came quickly. Several people close to Whitney publicly questioned whether continuing the celebration had been the right decision. Among the most vocal was singer Chaka Khan, who later said she believed the night should have ended differently. That moment has remained at the center of public discussion ever since. Not because it proves wrongdoing, but because it raised difficult questions about the music industry's culture. Can business continue in the middle of personal tragedy? Should one of music's biggest events have stopped completely? Or was there simply no perfect decision under impossible circumstances? Years later, comedian Katt broader comments about the entertainment business caused many people online to revisit old stories involving powerful music executives and famous artists. Those comments reignited discussion, not as evidence of what happened to Whitney Houston, but as part of a wider debate about power, money, and how the music industry treats its biggest stars. At the same time, fans began revisiting Whitney's incredible career. She wasn't just another singer. She was one of the greatest voices in music history. Her albums broke records. Her performances inspired generations. And her influence stretched far beyond the recording studio. That's one reason emotions remain so strong whenever her story is discussed. For many fans, Whitney's death wasn't simply the loss of a superstar. It was the loss of an icon whose influence is still felt today. And perhaps that's why the conversation has never completely disappeared. Because for every official answer, there are still people asking difficult questions. Not necessarily about conspiracy, but about decisions, about leadership, and about how one tragic night has continued shaping the legacy of everyone connected to it. In the next chapter, we'll look at the official timeline, why the circumstances of Whitney Houston's death continue to be discussed, and how public reaction has evolved over the years. But as the shock of Whitney Houston's passing began to settle, another conversation quietly started taking over. Not about her music, not about her extraordinary career, but about the official explanation surrounding her death. According to the official findings, Whitney Houston died on February 11, 2012, at the Beverly Hilton Hotel. The Los Angeles County coroner concluded that the cause of death was accidental drowning, with heart disease and cocaine use listed as contributing factors. Those findings closed the official investigation. For many people, that should have been the end of the story. But it wasn't. Because almost immediately, questions began appearing online. Fans revisited photographs, television interviews, news reports, and every public detail released during the investigation. Some people accepted the official findings. Others wondered whether every question had truly been answered. That debate has continued for years. Meanwhile, another issue became impossible to ignore. Whitney's career had been one of the greatest success stories in music history. She sold millions of albums, won countless awards, and became one of the most recognizable voices the world had ever heard. Yet according to publicly reported accounts discussed in your transcript, Whitney was also facing significant financial difficulties in the years before her death, despite signing one of the biggest recording contracts of her era. That revelation surprised many fans. How could someone with such enormous success reportedly be dealing with financial pressure? Music industry experts say the answer often lies in the complex structure of major recording contracts. Large advances can sound extraordinary, but those advances are generally recoupable, meaning artists may not receive additional royalties until those advances and other contractual costs are recovered. It's a business model that has existed in the music industry for decades. That realization sparked another conversation. Not necessarily about Whitney herself, but about the music business. Who really profits from blockbuster artists? Who controls the recordings? And what happens after an artist passes away? According to the transcript you uploaded, Whitney's music experienced a massive surge in sales following her death, bringing renewed attention to discussions about record deals, royalties, and estate finances. Those financial discussions have often been misunderstood online. Some commentators use them to raise broader concerns about how the music industry operates. Others caution against turning financial questions into unsupported allegations about criminal conduct. That's an important distinction. Because while debates about contracts and industry practices are legitimate topics, they do not by themselves establish wrongdoing. Meanwhile, Katt Williams' broader remarks about the entertainment industry added another layer to the public conversation. His comments encouraged many viewers to think critically about how the business operates, particularly when it comes to power, money, and artist relationships. For some audiences, those remarks reinforced long-held suspicions about the industry. For others, they served as a reminder to ask questions while still relying on verified facts. As the years passed, Whitney Houston's legacy continued growing. Her music inspired new generations. Her performances remained iconic. And documentaries, interviews, and retrospectives kept introducing her story to millions of younger fans. Yet one question never completely disappeared. Not who did it, but could the music industry have protected one of its biggest stars better? Because according to many commentators, that's the discussion that still resonates today. A discussion about fame, pressure, money, and the enormous challenges that often come with life at the very top of the entertainment world. And in the next chapter, we'll examine why Clive Davis' decision to continue the pre-Grammy event remains one of the most controversial moments in modern music history, and why people are still debating it more than a decade later. We'll examine why Clive Davis' decision to continue the pre-Grammy event remains one of the most controversial moments in modern music history, and why people are still debating it more than a decade later. As news of Whitney Houston's death spread through the Beverly Hilton Hotel, confusion quickly turned into disbelief. Guests arriving for Clive Davis' annual pre-Grammy gala suddenly found themselves at the center of one of the most shocking nights in music history. According to public reports discussed in your transcript, the event ultimately continued, with Clive Davis addressing attendees and saying the evening would become a tribute to Whitney. That decision immediately divided public opinion. Some believed there was simply no practical way to cancel an event of that scale at the last minute. Others felt the celebration should have stopped the moment the tragic news became known. The criticism didn't come only from fans. Several people who knew Whitney publicly questioned whether continuing the event had been appropriate. Among the most notable was Chaka Khan. In later interviews, she described the decision as deeply upsetting and said that, in her opinion, a more fitting tribute would have been to gather everyone together, offer a prayer, and end the evening respectfully. Those comments reignited debate that continues even today. Because for many people, the issue wasn't whether music should eventually continue. It was about timing. Could the industry have paused, if only for one night, to honor one of its greatest voices? Meanwhile, Clive Davis defended his decision publicly. He explained that he believed Whitney herself would have wanted the music to continue, and that the evening had effectively become a tribute to her legacy. That explanation satisfied some people. But not everyone. As the years passed, the event itself became almost as widely discussed as the tragedy that preceded it. For some fans, it symbolized the difficult balance between business and humanity inside the entertainment industry. Others argued it reflected the reality that major live events often continue even in the face of heartbreaking news. The debate remains unresolved. At the same time, Whitney's music experienced an extraordinary resurgence. Albums returned to the charts. Millions of people revisited her greatest performances. And a new generation discovered the voice that had defined an era. Her legacy proved stronger than any headline. Yet the conversations surrounding that night never completely disappeared. Because whenever Whitney Houston's story is revisited, people inevitably return to the same questions. Could anything have been handled differently? Did the music industry learn important lessons from that tragedy? And how should powerful executives respond when unimaginable events unfold during major public celebrations? Those questions continue to spark discussion, not because they change the official findings about Whitney's death, but because they speak to broader issues of leadership, responsibility, and compassion during moments of crisis. And that's why, even more than a decade later, the night before the 2012 Grammy Awards remains one of the most talked about moments in modern music history. But according to many commentators, the biggest lesson may have nothing to do with controversy. It may be about remembering Whitney Houston for what she gave the world. A once-in-a-generation voice. An unforgettable career. And a legacy that continues to inspire millions of people long after the headlines have faded. In the next chapter, we'll look at how Whitney's legacy continued to grow after her passing, why discussions about the music industry still surround her story today, and what many fans believe is the most important lesson to take from her remarkable life. As Whitney Houston's legacy continued growing, another conversation refused to disappear. Not about her extraordinary voice, not about her record-breaking career, but about the music industry itself. For years, fans have asked the same question. What happens to an artist's legacy after they are gone? According to music industry experts, It's common for an artist's catalog to experience a dramatic increase in streams, album sales, and licensing after their death. That happened with Whitney Houston. Millions of fans returned to her music. Classic albums climbed the charts again. And younger audiences discovered songs that had defined an entire generation. For many, it was a celebration of her unmatched talent. For others, it reignited broader discussions about how record contracts, estates, and royalty payments work after an artist passes away. Those discussions have existed in the music industry for decades. They extend far beyond Whitney Houston. Artists like Michael Jackson, Prince, and many others have also prompted public debate about ownership, intellectual property, and the long-term value of music catalogs. According to commentators, these conversations often reveal just how complicated the business side of music can be. Meanwhile, Clive Davis remained one of the industry's most influential executives. His supporters credit him with discovering and developing some of the greatest recording artists of all time. His critics argue that the industry has long needed greater transparency in how artists are supported, compensated, and protected. Those two perspectives have existed side by side for years. And Whitney Houston's story often becomes part of that larger conversation. Meanwhile, fans continue returning to one undeniable fact. Whitney's voice remains timeless. From I Will Always Love You, to Greatest Love of All, to I Have Nothing. Her music continues reaching millions of listeners around the world. That legacy has outlived every controversy, every headline, and every online debate. According to many observers, perhaps that's the most important part of Whitney's story. Not the speculation, not the rumors, but the music itself, the emotion, the inspiration, and the unforgettable performances that changed popular music forever. Still, the questions surrounding the music business haven't disappeared. Every time another legendary artist passes away, fans begin asking similar questions. Who controls the music? Who manages the estate? How are financial decisions made? And what responsibilities do major record companies have toward the artists who helped build their success? Those are important discussions. They don't always have simple answers, but they continue shaping public understanding of the entertainment industry. As Whitney's legacy continues inspiring new generations, one truth remains impossible to ignore. Her impact can never be measured only by record sales or awards. She changed music forever. She inspired countless singers. And she left behind a catalog that continues touching millions of lives around the world. But in our final chapter, we'll examine why Whitney Houston's story still resonates today, what lessons the music industry has learned since her passing, and why her legacy remains far greater than any controversy ever could. As we reach the end of this story, one thing becomes impossible to ignore. Whitney Houston's legacy has proven far stronger than any controversy. More than a decade after her passing, her voice still fills stadiums, movie soundtracks, streaming playlists, and radio stations across the world. New generations continue discovering her music. Older fans continue celebrating the artist they grew up listening to. And despite years of debate surrounding the circumstances of her death, one fact has never changed. Whitney Houston remains one of the greatest vocalists in music history. Meanwhile, discussions about the music industry continue. Questions about artist contracts. Questions about financial transparency. Questions about how record labels support performers during the most difficult periods of their careers. These are conversations that extend far beyond one artist or one executive. They are industry-wide issues that continue being debated today. According to commentators, Whitney's story has encouraged many people to learn more about how the music business actually works. Not only the glamorous side that audiences see on stage, but the business decisions happening behind the scenes. Those conversations are likely to continue for years. At the same time, it's important to separate documented facts from speculation. The official investigation into Whitney Houston's death concluded with findings from the Los Angeles County coroner, while many of the additional theories discussed online remain unverified and have not been established by official investigations. That distinction matters because Whitney's remarkable career deserves to be remembered for what she accomplished, not only for the circumstances surrounding her final days. Millions of people still remember where they were when they first heard "I Will Always Love You." They remember her unforgettable performances, her powerful live vocals, her influence on generations of artists who followed. That is the legacy that continues inspiring people around the world. Perhaps the biggest lesson from Whitney's life isn't about controversy at all. It's about the pressures that often accompany extraordinary fame. The expectations, the constant public attention, and the importance of protecting the people behind the performances. Because behind every superstar is a human being, a person facing challenges that audiences may never fully understand. Whitney Houston's story reminds us how extraordinary talent can inspire millions, while also reminding us of the importance of compassion, support, and understanding for artists living under constant public scrutiny. Her music continues, her influence continues, and her legacy continues touching millions of lives around the world, long after the headlines have faded. Now we'd like to hear from you. What do you think is Whitney Houston's greatest musical legacy? Which of her songs has had the biggest impact on your life? And do you think the music industry has changed enough to better protect artists today? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this documentary, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more deep dives into music history, legendary artists, and the stories behind the headlines. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.